Well, good Monday, guys. Good to see you. I hope you guys, we had a lot to get to today. There's a lot happening in Washington, but there's a lot that, over the weekend, the Patriots had a bye week and I thought, okay, it's going to be a quiet week. No, no, full
Patriots
Christmas
got a
mode.
big one on Sunday. You got
Yeah.
the Bills coming to town.
Bills coming to town. But look, you guys, I think you know this. I went to a D3 school with no football. So this has not been my thing. But Dan, I was a little shocked by the college football.
Hey, by the way, just breaking news as we come online, Colin Allard just dropped out of the Texas Senate race.
Oh, whoa.
So there, the shadow of Jasmine Crockett.
Oh my gosh, we got to change our lineup.
I know. Exactly. All right. We're going to mention it, but now, okay. I'm done talking weekend.
Yeah, we're going in hot. Here it is.
Yeah,
Happy Monday.
as we say in the military, there ain't alibis before we get going.
Wait, who's reporting this, Dan?
The Hill.
The Hill.
Just flashed on my computer.
Peripheral vision. Nation is probably excited that they broke that on the Hill.
Yeah.
All right. Look, I'll let Rachel figure out. Give her a second here to figure out how to work this in. But
sure.
Look, the president was at the Kennedy Center last night. Big deal. I love this, by the way. I'm a big fan of the fact that, like, first term, we didn't get involved in the cultural things and focused on. And this guy now, he gets it. He's changing decor. He's involved in the Kennedy Center. But
will it be the Trump Center by the end of 2026?
You heard he joked last night. You saw that? Like, he made a joke to the press. He said, the Trump Kennedy Center. Oh, I'm kidding. Although he's not.
Yeah.
We'll
of course
see.
He's not. It's going to be plastered in gold across the Kennedy Center very soon. Just wait.
I think Trump Kennedy or Kennedy Trump. I'd be interested to see if the Kennedy folks then said just take our name off of it.
Also, just very quickly, since we broke the news, I am being told, because people do watch this show who are in the know, it's Al Red, so I mispronounced his last name.
Yeah. What did you say?
I think I said Al Ed. I didn't have
it's Colin Alred. I know that.
All right, let's move in though. Let's go through. Do you want to do the day book first?
Yeah. Let me go real quick
to Congress.
All right, that's big because of a lot. Anyway, 2:00, the president's going to do this cabinet meeting. This is the cabinet room. He's got a big announcement. He's anticipated that he's going to announce a big bailout for soybean farmers in particular, to the tune of $12 billion. The Senate is returning today. The House is returning today. Rahm Emanuel is in Miami to campaign for this Democrat. She's running for mayor. That's a stretch, right, Dan?
Well, a Dem hasn't won the Miami mayoral in 32 years. Pete Buttigieg was down there the other day. Democrats are keeping a close eye on it. It'd be big.
All right. Is it? I thought, is the Miami race partisan or nonpartisan?
It's nonpartisan technically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Technically, you're right.
Yep.
All right. The DNC winter meeting is happening in Los Angeles. That's got to be chock full of news on the calendar, right?
Yeah, 2028. There's a story this weekend. South Carolina's turning to make a move. Obviously, New Hampshire, Iowa. Who goes first is something that is going to matter.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. And then on the politics side, obviously, we mentioned it was the filing deadline. We'll talk about that Texas primary and figure out how Rachel's going to work this in now, because we're going to just mention it quickly. But obviously, I think this is going to have big effects on that. Indiana is going to review its maps. It goes over the Senate. This continues to be the sticking point. There's a lot of people who feel like, obviously the House and the Senate, House in Indiana is going to pass it. The Senate is where the problem is, and I don't see any breakthrough there. So, we'll keep an eye on that. Anyway, Rachel, what do we got on the agenda today now that we've thrown a loop into this?
Sure. We're going to talk about how the economy continues to sort of confound President Trump and the GOP. I think that was the lead story this morning on Fox and Friends at 7 a.m., which is saying something there. The GOP blame game on this is starting to happen, so we'll discuss that. Ahead of the Supreme Court today, they're going to be hearing arguments about how independent agencies actually can top officials be fired by the president. Mamdani has some advice for undocumented immigrants to evade ICE officials. Republicans are going to have a heyday with that. And then Shapiro's making moves in Pennsylvania. But let's just start with this breaking news about Colin Allred dropping out. This is obviously coming, Dan, on a day that Jasmine Crockett, who's on very much the progressive side of the Democratic Party, is expected to launch her own Senate bid. We have been talking, people have been saying, Texas could potentially go blue someday. Democrats have been talking about this for years.
Yeah.
This severely undercuts their attempt to do that, correct?
Yeah, I think
on
this is pretty wild. I mean, supposedly he may run in the 33rd congressional district now, so he would be kind of a part of it. But you're right, and of course, over the weekend there was a story about Texas kind of Beto O'Rourke and people meeting to try to clear the fields to create the best candidates they thought for each, for attorney general, for lieutenant governor, for governor, for the Senate, to try to gin up turnout across the coalition. But look, I mean, good for Jasmine Crockett. If she wants to do this.
Just to be clear, do you think that Colin dropped out because she was Jenny in? Because he wasn't raising the money?
I would think
can't
so.
imagine that they're not
the timing
connected.
is uncanny.
Yeah,
right. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on that. But to Rachel's point, I got to tell you, you end up with Jasmine Crockett as your nominee. I mean, the next person who walks down my street could be.
Well, look, but Sean, we've talked about Michigan, Maine, like the progressives are not waiting anymore. Like we have to have these fights.
But it's one thing to do it in Maine. It's another in Michigan, in Texas. That's
red-leaning Texas. And Colin Allred, just to remind people, has more of this sort of pragmatic centrist approach. Nancy Pelosi in particular really was, gunning for him and hoping he would be the nominee and that he could sort of carry the.
And he ran, and he's run before. Like, I mean, he's been around the block now. Like, I think people thought maybe to be a better candidate. So we'll have to see. The filing deadline's this afternoon, but at the DSCC, they're probably having a, cocktail here for breakfast.
Why? You think that this is good news for them?
No, they're drowning their sorrows.
Oh, okay. I tend to drink in the morning if celebrate, have fun.
You can celebrate or cry in your beer.
I just want to make sure I understand why you're
depending on your ideological persuasion.
I will say the funny thing is obviously the conversation is dominated by the left, but they're right. We have our own little deal right now, which is we've got Wesley Hunt, John Cornyn, and Attorney General Ken Paxton. I still don't understand. I've heard Wesley Hunt. I think, first of all, he's an unbelievably impressive guy. He's a huge benefit to our party and an impressive story. But I just don't see I've never understood the numbers on Wesley Hunt. And here's the dirty secret. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, but as of, I think, a week ago, Wesley Hunt had still not filed.
And that's the question is, does he go today?
Right.
Does he get out? So
and stay. And by the way, and stay in the House.
Yeah. So the deadline 6 p.m. Eastern or Central Time today.
So we're going to be spending a lot of time looking down at in
Texas. Yeah, Texas is going to be interesting. It's very interesting. Let's just hit on the weekend chatter very quickly.
Yeah.
Dan, over the weekend, you were tweeting about this Biden immigration story, saying that you were super upset about it. And it took a while to get you to read it. Just tell us what this was and why it.
I think what's remarkable is, we talked in previous iterations about kind of quietly over the summer, Bernie Sanders said, we made a mistake on immigration. You had Hakeem Jeffries last week, or I think it was over Thanksgiving, saying Trump deserves some credit for closing the southern border. So the New York Times does this massive, story. It is a very long story, just kind of a TikTok of the disaster of the Biden immigration plan. And what's so kind of just cringe-inducing is there were people around Biden who knew before he got elected that if they went forward with some of what they were talking about, it could be a huge problem. And I think what you saw was it's Trump derangement syndrome, like Biden's kind of overarching, we're going to undo basically everything he did. He then became kind of super indecisive when problems emerged. Then he was indifferent to it, kind of like, I don't want to talk about this. And then the political calculation that, like, if they crack down on immigration, they'll lose Latinos, which of course Trump cracked down on or proposed cracking down and won Latinos.
Right.
So it's so horrifying to read it, just how bad the Biden people were on this topic. So. Look, I think the big question is in 2028, we've talked about this. Is any Dem going to talk about undoing what Trump is doing?
Yeah. Right. Because on what? On immigration, on tariffs? I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to go.
It's going to be interesting because I think that any credible 2028er is going to have to start by saying, I will keep the southern border closed. That has to be the opening statement.
And can I just say something about the political calculation that was made by the Biden administration about we can't crack down on the border because what will it do with turnout with Hispanic populations, et cetera. This, again, harkens back to this problem the Democratic Party has, which is, this over the top freak out about what it will mean to alienate certain communities. I mean, this happened with the Tim Waltz situation in Minnesota with the Somali fraud scheme, them not cracking down on this because of a fear that it would look like racism or something like that. So
well,
obviously
the funny thing is, Rachel, that bleeds into the Hegseth story, because all weekend long, whether it's Adam Schiff, Seth Moulton, they're all out there. And I like, this is my sympathetic to drug dealers. Like, they were like, these people don't, they deserve their day in court. And I'm like, wow. Like, first you guys coddle up to criminals and illegal aliens, and now it's drug smugglers.
You had a different take on that, right, Dan?
Well, I mean, one of the things that's just remarkable is we still have never talked about the Honduran pardon. Like, the whole like GOP like mantra of like drug busters, and then Trump goes and pardons the biggest drug kingpin there was. Like, it was unbelievable. But yes.
Just a couple more things on weekend. The politics of Netflix. President Trump indicated last night that he could be weighing in on this Netflix proposal for the $72 billion merger or takeover for Warner Brothers. This is not surprising. And there's this little nugget in a Bloomberg story that the head of Netflix was recently at the White House talking to the president. Sean, is this just sort of the new normal that if you have like business ahead of the government that you got to go kiss some serious ass at the White House?
100%. I mean, well, I mean, I don't know why. Like, when he said that last night, I would have been shocked if he didn't say it.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah. I mean,
I think the big thing is like, keep an eye. I mean, this is such an interesting thing, because on the Democratic side, like, we are losing tech money, but we still have Hollywood money. So like, does any 2028er start, just jump in and say, I'm with the unions, I'm with Hollywood? Like, what does Gavin Newsom do? These are two powerful interests in his state. What does JD Vance do? You got the Murdochs and Ellison on one side, all the anti, big tech on the other. Keep an eye on it.
It was interesting, though. I know that there are two separate pieces to this, but from what I understand, at least, there were some people at CNN breathing a sigh of relief that and I still don't, I admittedly understand. I know that there are two pieces. There's the Discovery piece, and then there's the Warner Brothers. But again, there was at least some concern that something was going to get lumped in, and we'll see. But I will be interested to see if how hard DOJ pushes back.
Yep.
I did have a fourth item for the weekend, but we got to move quicker. At some point, we'll talk about the freak out online happening over Tucker Carlson saying in Doha that he's going to be purchasing property in Qatar. A lot of people talking about that here in Washington. But let's just move to the economy. So President Trump, not today, but tomorrow, will be heading to Pennsylvania for this first in a series of swings he's going to be doing on the economy, right? And sort of selling what he's done to sort of help people's pocketbooks. There was a really interesting story over the weekend that the Wall Street Journal had saying that there's an all hands on deck right now effort to try to change his message a little bit ahead of this swing. They're trying to sort of right the ship and get him to sort of acknowledge that there is continued hurt with a lot of Americans when it comes to economic issues and how they're feeling about their own bank accounts. From the story, it says that aides have shown the president internal polling about this problem and social media posts that sort of illustrate the issue. And now I guess the big question is, does he heed that advice that he's getting from his inner circle? Sean, let's start there. Is he going to listen?
First of all, when people say stuff like, "Is he?" Trump listens all the time. I mean, like, but he always trusts his gut, and that's the thing, is he has this ability to read a room and to read. That's why when he does a rally or a big thing. So part of this is he reads it. I think it's not like he doesn't know what's going on. The guy consumes media at a pace that far exceeds what any normal president would ever, or most politicians, frankly. So he sees what's going on. I think the question is, the script is going to, like so many occasions, the script is going to be one thing. What does he riff on? Does he go off? We'll see. I mean, tonight, I think is going to be the first test to that, or when he, in Pennsylvania, rather, when he talks, and does he, how does he do this? But it's funny. I had Robert Cahaley on the show on Friday. We had the same conversation, and he was just like, he said it differently than I have, but it was the same conclusion, which you got to connect that dot. Hey, we're making progress, more to be done, right? And that's, we'll see if he gets there. Because like I said last week, I think he's got a perfect foil. Biden, he can still have his boogeyman, but say, I'm working hard. I won't rest until.
The problem is when he calls it a Democratic hoax. I know, like you said, and a lot of Republicans have said they understand what he means, that, this was a Biden problem to begin with, and then it takes time to sort of course correct. But Dan, sort of what are you expecting on this? Can he really pull the party out of this sort of hole when it comes to the affordability issue?
What I'm looking at is like Trump is the master at walking and chewing gum, which is to say, I think in public, he is going to kind of not necessarily feel your pain. He's going to do what Sean just said. I think the real question is in private, so to speak. He knows the tariffs are a problem. They're going to do the bailout today, which is just a classic admission that tariffs are having a huge impact on the economy. At the same time, there was the Thanksgiving announcements of like, oh, by the way, we're going to drop lower tariffs on coffee and bananas and things like that. All these stories are appearing about companies that after Liberation Day stockpiled inventory, stockpiled supplies, hoping that the tariffs by the fall would be down. They're still on. They're all warning. You have Kohl's, Abercrombie, William and Sonoma, Under Armour, small businesses. If these stay in place another few weeks, we are jacking prices. So I think the question is, what does he do kind of on Friday evenings, on the weekends, try not to, have people see it, to start dropping the tariffs?
There was this interesting nugget in the Washington Post story over the weekend where Newt Gingrich, who obviously has a close relationship with the president, said that psychologically, President Trump hates to admit being in a hole. His whole career has been built on forcing the positive. And so just sort of acknowledgement that there's still work to be done is very difficult for him. Dan, I think you mentioned that last week as well. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if he uses that hoax language again, which Democrats are already planning to use in campaign ads next year. But this sort of feeds into our next topic, which is this GOP.
Well, by the way, I think if he uses it, it just has to use it in context, which is,
yes, explain what he
Democrats
means.
didn't care about it for years, and now they suddenly do. They're a hoax, right? The predicate matters in coming from a guy who is very poor at grammar. But so anyway, I think
I am too, and I'm a
it
journalist.
matters.
So, well.
But you're right.
Okay, let's talk about the blame game. So this isn't the only thing that has Republicans here in Washington frustrated. What are they going to do about the affordability crisis? There is also concern about what are they going to do with these ACA premiums that expire at the end of the year. There's a feeling that Republicans are, quote, rudderless. This is what I heard from a very senior Republican campaign operative I talked to just a couple of days. And, I gave him this sort of protection to keep his name out of things. And he just sort of let it rip on all these frustrations. And just to give people sort of a peek behind the curtain here in Washington, because this, is starting to spill out in public. We are starting to see Republicans have this sort of freak out that their majorities are starting to slip away. And you can see that in the fighting on Capitol Hill. You can see that even in that Wall Street Journal story that we were just talking about, where you have White House, or I guess administration, either allies or people close to the inner circle suggesting that this advice is being given. It's the president who they're not sure is going
Don't
to
blame us, blame him.
So, Sean, let's just talk a little bit about this blame game. How typical or atypical is it at this point in a cycle? And who is getting the bulk of this blame right now, would you say?
It depends on who you talk to. So some members of Congress that I talked to last week were like, we're fine. We know what we need to do, or I know what I need to do, i.e. for my own district. I think a lot will depend in the next week. There's a lot of talk about healthcare this week. Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania is going to drop a piece of legislation that he says can get the 60 votes, and is kind of along the lines of what we talked about last week. What is realistic? Not what is partisan, but what's realistic. And where do we think we end up, and whether people want to have that discussion now. I got to tell you, I think that there's a little bit of there's some bedwetters that always happen around now. Like, I worry about this, I worry about that. There's some pragmatic people that are saying if we course correct the right way. So I think part of this just depends. There's multiple boxes right now of individuals. The problem is that you can only point the finger at so many people. There's if you go back in the Bush administration, there were plenty of people who pointed fingers at different cabinet secretaries. Rumsfeld got his turn in the barrel for a while, and then it was Scott McClellan, the press secretary. He wasn't communicating effectively. But at the end of the day, it's a leadership thing more than anything else. It's just, I think people have to point a finger somewhere. So I think the answer is in the next month, we'll find out how much, like, does healthcare start to, if there's an actual solution and a viable answer where people feel like, okay, because to your point about the rudderless, I keep asking this, who's driving the ship? And that's the thing, is that if there feels like it's still not getting better, I think the freak out will grow louder coming into January.
Yeah, and you do have, just real quickly before I go to Dan, there are a lot of Republicans privately pointing the finger at President Trump. They just don't do it on the record, right? They're talking about wanting him to use the bully pulpit more. And I mean, look, he's going to start doing that this week when he travels internally. So we'll just have to see how this goes. But Dan, how can Democrats, or how will Democrats take advantage of this sort of bedwetting, as Spicer just put it right there, which is an apt.
And I mean, I think something too that's like kind of interesting about this is the Trump campaign was so airtight. It was well run. I think other than like the 2 weeks when Kamala got in and Trump was a little frustrated, there wasn't a lot of circular firing squad. There wasn't, wholesale changes and people getting fired. So for the first time in this like second term and kind of Trump's second act, let's call it, you're starting to hear rumors of people being fired, Trump's upset with people, staff pointing fingers. So like, it's worth watching. I think what's interesting for Democrats is like we have some simplistic messaging, which is I think what you're going to hear, and it's going to make this more uncomfortable, is they can go to each district and say, here are the Medicaid cuts from the big beautiful bill in our district, the hospitals being closed, the number of people that are going to lose health insurance. Here's the premium hikes that average in our district. Here are the tariff impacts in our district. It's simple. It's the Mitch McConnell, just blame them. And people are upset with the incumbents. And I think the DCCC is organizing this stuff to hand out. It's all politics is local. I think the party's got, for the first time in maybe 3 years, we're on offense. You don't have these conversations of blame when you're winning. It's when you're losing.
Just a couple pieces of news related to this on the Obamacare subsidies. Leanne Caldwell of Puck News reported last night that as many as 20 House Republicans could be announcing their retirements in the coming weeks. Obviously, a lot of frustration on Capitol Hill, so we'll be watching that. And this isn't immediate resignations. These are retirements serving out their term. I should be clear there. And then just a little bit of sort of color and context. I was texting with a senior Republican official last night asking about these Obamacare subsidies, because there is a deadline at the end of the week for the Senate to have a vote on extending these subsidies. And I said, what is the plan here, to senior Republicans? And the response I got back was basically that they are going to be accusing Democrats of not wanting to make a deal. There is this notion that they're going to be putting out that Schumer is holding his members back from making a deal, and that the blame game, again, talking about the blame game, they're going to try to put the blame on Democrats, saying they actually don't want a deal. We'll see if that actually works, because again, they're in power.
By the way, I wrote this down because just to make a note, this reporting about 20 retirements, that would be very significant, right? And so I just that there are always going to be retirements, and especially if you're going right now, you got 2 years after you retire to either make money off of the current administration that's definitely in, or try to join it in some cases. So I understand that there is definitely going to be a number of, but that's a pretty high number.
Yeah.
In terms of addition to. Yeah. And so I just want to make sure, like, when things like this happen, I always feel like a lot of reporting is like the weatherman. There's never any accountability. Somebody who reports something and then a month later, they never actually have to follow up on what they said was going to happen. And so I'll be interested to see when we look back in a month from now, whether or not this is accurate.
And that would be a huge problem in terms of Republicans trying to keep the House, right?
Yeah, of course.
You don't have name recognition. If a lot of the incumbents step aside, right? Raising money, as you mentioned. So yeah, a big thing there. Let's go to our third topic. Today at the Supreme Court, we're potentially going to be seeing the beginning of the end of, quote, independent agencies in the federal government. Justices are going to be hearing arguments today about whether the president can fire not just, your average standard federal employees, but those who are considered to be independent agencies and these sort of independent watchdogs. This case centers on the former Federal Trade Commissioner, Rebecca Slaughter, who convinced lower judges that she should be able to keep her job after she was let go by the Trump administration. The question is, does the Supreme Court come in and overrule? And Sean, this is a case that President Trump is going to win, right? We know how John Roberts feels about these sorts of issues, and it's not in the way of Rebecca Slaughter, perhaps is the way to say it, I guess.
Well, so there's a little bit of a difference in terms of the U.S. code that governs it. But again, remember, there's a reason that the Spicer v. Biden case matters. It's because the Biden administration went to court and argued in the affirmative that the president has the right to fire people. And so that case is now being used as the predicate for why we get to do it. And I know, at the time, people didn't care, right? They said, oh, Biden's firing these people and who cares? And we don't like you anyway, so it doesn't matter. And it's just the Trump people. And then the folks in America First Legal said, great, let's file a lawsuit on this and make the administration go to court and argue in the affirmative that they have a right to do it. And so to some degree now, everyone's living with the consequences. They don't like what Trump's doing, but they don't realize that Biden set the trap for this. It was the Biden administration that went out and did it. No one had a problem at the time, because it was like, oh, don't worry. We don't like Trump people anyway, so who cares? And now they're paying the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the challenge is ultimately if every new administration comes in and blows out the entire government, you're talking about huge pendulum swings when business and other parts of society. Yeah, no. I hear you, Sean. I'm not disagreeing that Biden started it on some level, but I think there is a real question for the country. Is that good? Do you seriously want the entire regulatory apparatus going like this every 4 years? Imagine running a business and trying to plan out. It's a dangerous thing. And hopefully at some point there is a solution that both sides can agree to and lay down their arms a little.
Well, I mean, I also don't know that I really, to your point, like, if you win an election, to the winner goes the spoils. And I say that on both sides. I mean, like,
well, that's why there's always been like political appointees and then the bureaucracy, right? And so there is some general change, but to try to have stability and predictability so that there isn't massive change. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's where the court's going to go. And that's what we're going to get.
Yeah.
Dan, do you think Democrats will use this at all on the campaign trail?
I think, unfortunately, it's going to be the opposite, which is they're going to say, if we get power back, we are blowing everybody out. What are the things that we are going to do? The agencies, how are we going to tear them apart? And unfortunately, I just think the eye for the eye scenario is going to be more prevalent than, let's think of a better solution for the country.
Let's move on to Mamdani's new piece of advice for undocumented immigrants. So this is
thank you. Talk about some of the in the campaign trail.
Making the rounds everybody should be talking about it, not just folks on the right. But the mayor-elect in New York City has a new video out giving advice to undocumented migrants getting swept up by ICE. And this includes how to evade agents and, quote, stand up to the Fed. Let's just start there, Dan. Why do Democrats keep doing this? I mean, it may not be political suicide for him in New York, which is very left-leaning, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of political malpractice for the party, Republicans are going to tie this to every other Democrat here in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, look, on the one hand, he has the right to say what he did. And he, unlike the people who have said kind of to outright resist, what he laid out was all factually correct. You do have these rights as a U.S. citizen. And so, all right, there's nothing wrong with highlighting it. The problem is, as you say, is you're now going to ask, is Sherrod Brown going to say, yes, this is the Democratic position of all the ways that you're making ICE's life difficult? Is Roy Cooper in North Carolina going to want to be doing the same thing? I don't think so. And you're coming on top of those 6 senators or 6 members of Congress who talked about you can disobey illegal military order. It sure seems like we are intentionally trying to cause trouble for agencies executing, orders that they're receiving. They're in the executive branch. So it's a headache for the party. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, this goes back to this. Here's what I've never understood. Like, if you don't like a law, then fight to change it, right? There's like, if you want to support whatever, but the idea of telling people how to evade.
Well, not evade. What he's saying is you have these rights. You don't have to open the door. So if you're saying you have to enforce the immigration laws, What he's saying is you have your rights in the law, right?
Yeah.
It's the rub, but it looks like you're saying,
right.
how do you make this hard on them?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like the Seditious Six video
Yeah,
where
exactly.
it's like, you know what you're really doing, but you're doing it in a way that you can kind of be like, what are you talking about? That wasn't me. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And that's, I just, one of the things that's interesting to me for, both parties is you take a position because of the short-term political expediency that it gets you in the moment.
Right.
And then 2 years from now, you're like, oh crap, we own that. Right. And so to this question, is this something that you're going to go in a year or two from now? Like, yeah, I'm not really sure that was the smartest idea.
Well, and you know what's going to happen? Watch the 2028ers. Now, who is going to stand with him? Does J.B. Pritzker, does Wes Moore? What does Schumer and Jeffries say? Like, Shapiro's going to be in front of the public a little bit. If he's asked about this, well, do you support this in Philadelphia? Do you support this? This is where people are going to be asked, do you know what to get?
Well, and the nuance will matter, right?
Yep.
How they say, look, I appreciate, because if he give the answer that you did, which is, look, people have a right to know their rights. That's a great answer. Yep. If it's, I'm going to stand with these people against the thugs at ICE, that's going to come back to haunt you.
Yep.
Can I just say, this is why I never understood the sort of media and Democratic freak out about why Democratic leaders were not endorsing Mamdani. This is why, right? I mean, you have people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. They're going to be asked about this throughout the week. What's your position on this? Like, is he telling, illegal immigrants to evade ICE? Like, do you agree with him? Yeah. Like, there was a reason why Schumer didn't endorse Mamdani, and it was to keep sort of distance and cover for his own members who are up in difficult re-elections from this guy who is now all of a sudden in the middle of the headlines and sort of driving this conversation. Like, keep some distance on that. And now, Jeffries has endorsed him, obviously bowed to pressure from the party to do that. And so it makes that sort of tie for Republicans a lot easier. And I just feel like this is going to be the new thing on Capitol Hill. For a long time, it was us running around asking Republicans, what do you think of President Trump's tweet during the first term? And Republican lawmakers hated that question because he would always say controversial stuff on Twitter and they didn't want to respond to it. Now it's going to be the opposite, where reporters are going to be running and asking Democrats, sticking mics in their face.
But you know what?
What do you think of this?
The funny thing is, I hope they do, but I always felt like the Democrats got a break on this, that like someone would say something crazy and you'd never see that microphone stuck in front of like any of the other people's faces asking them to react.
Yeah. Let's talk Josh Shapiro. So Axios, Alex Thompson and Holly Otterbein have a good sort of smart look at Shapiro making moves this weekend about how he's going to try to run up the scoreboard in his state during the midterms and help use it to sort of launch himself into 2028. They report that Shapiro has, quote, tightened the grip on Pennsylvania's Democratic machine, that he's looking to flip as many as 4 seats in Pennsylvania, basically be...
That would be the majority.
Pardon?
Right there. I said that would be the majority if everything
held.
Be
the Stonewall, or I guess it's not the Stonewall. Flip the Democratic. Yeah. Flip the Republican House, not be the Stonewall. Dan, a question on this: why lay this out in advance of doing it? Why not just do it and then brag about it? Because now, if he doesn't live up to those 4 seats, that's a huge embarrassment going into 2028.
Oh, look, Shapiro is such an interesting guy because there's so much promise. Some people are so bullish on him. We talked last week about the kind of like terrible profile of him in the Atlantic, at least that I thought was terrible. To me, this is Shapiro counter-programming Trump. Trump's going to Northeast Pennsylvania tomorrow. It's the first kind of domestic travel really here, kind of kicking off the midterms a little bit. He's clearly kind of saying, welcome to PA. I am going to try to run the score up. Look, remember, DeSantis did this in 22. He ended that year as the darling of the right. Look at what he had done in Florida, a huge margin. But I agree with you. You are putting yourself out there now. And I'm sure the White House is thinking, how can we slow him down, right? We always talk about the Clinton White House made the mistake in Texas of letting Bush run up in 98 and just kind of get all that momentum going. It is interesting what he did. And of course, we were talking right before we came on. Shapiro is on NBC tomorrow night with, I think, who is it? Cox from
Utah.
From Utah. So there'll be a split screen. Trump, presumably pretty red hot up in Pennsylvania at a rally. Shapiro with Cox on a, in DC talking about how can we get along more? How can we get stuff done? He's starting to step out, but you're right. You're exposing yourself if this goes sideways.
Yeah. Sean, how much of a threat is he, do you think, for Republicans in 2028?
I think he's someone I would keep an eye on. He doesn't he doesn't impress me. I think he is, the funny part is I think he should have taken the VP slot. I think he is probably a good number 2. He just doesn't seem to me that the kind of guy that, I don't know. It just, when you kind of, he's just not somebody when I watch him, I go, wow, that's a guy that gets media,
he gets media. He gets attention.
No. But I mean, like, in terms of, like, we always talk about how Gavin Newsom really knows how to, be in the right place or use social media. Like, I feel like, yes, he gets attention, but you look at the mistake he made last week at the Atlantic. I think that was, I mentioned this last week, Dan, but I think this was a huge blunder to think somehow that was going to end well.
I think the one, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. No, please, Dan.
I was going to say is, like, go back to 2020. You had Sanders and Warren were like the Newsom and kind of AOCs of that cycle. They got lots of attention. They were very active in social media. They were always on MSNBC and everything. And Biden kind of like plugged along. There is, like, Shapiro is formidable. Like, could I see Shapiro doing well in Georgia? Absolutely. Like, in the Atlanta suburbs, where, by the way, there's a lot of Jewish, kind of country club Republicans who would be very comfortable with Josh Shapiro. North Carolina, I think he would be a good candidate. The issue for him is the base. I mean, there is trepidation. There's the fact that he is Jewish. The fact.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that an issue right now for you guys?
Huge. Yeah. He's going to have to winning candidates figure out how to make this work. He is going to probably have to do some sort of JFK, Obama style speech to go right at it and look in the camera and take this issue head on.
It's funny though. I bring this up because I know this is off topic, but it got a lot of attention, at least. Well, I think in both sides, but Michelle Obama going out there and saying that America's not ready for a woman president.
Yeah.
And then this weekend on one of the shows, Clyburn said, I agree.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know that that's true. I just, especially on our side, I think
I was going to say, I think the first female president will be a Republican. There's no doubt in my mind.
But I feel like this whole idea of, I think it's probably harder right now on the Democratic side, not on the Republican side, for either somebody who's Jewish or a woman than it would be on the Republican side. Like, I think we would have no problem.
Yeah.
I actually think there is. Yeah. I mean, I find Michelle Obama the last few years so fascinating. I mean, just what she's doing, kind of the issues she's talking about. To me, it's a little bit of like complaining and just it's a fascinating thing. But I actually totally disagree with that. I just think the right female candidate hasn't run. I mean,
I agree. Yes.
Harris and Hillary were just not great political athletes.
Yeah.
Right. I think Hillary would have been an amazing president, but she struggles as a political athlete a little bit. So
she had baggage going into that race. So a lot of centrist Americans didn't like her. She was never going to win them.
Right. No, checked baggage.
Yep.
Not carry on.
Well, that's actually all we have for today. We actually
I will say
very fast.
I was I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was pleased to welcome into the club. It's a very elite club, but this weekend Pete Hegseth was inaugurated into the SNL club. Melissa McCarthy hosted. I will admit a little bit of concern when I saw that Today Show did a thing about her. Who would she be reprising? And I thought to myself, this is going to be an interesting Sunday morning. But they did a really funny. I don't know. I thought it was a little over the top, but
I didn't see it.
It's
for the show.
I don't think we were too fast. I think we were perfect. We've heard people's feedback, and I think we were perfect.
I was going to say, just a reminder to folks. The intention in January is to hear more from you guys. Get your questions.
Well, also, by the way, please go to the Huddle, the DC Huddle, the DCHuddle.com to sign up. You'll stay in touch with all of there it is right there on the screen. the DC Huddle. You can sign up to make sure that you're in the know when it comes to all the information that we put out, the times and all sorts of fun stuff. And then I think our Twitter handle is up at the DC Huddle, so you can start to follow us. And as we roll that kind of stuff out,
is our YouTube not yet? YouTube?
No, not yet. But we'll have our
all coming.
It's
all
registered.
the big Hollywood types are working on it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But we will be sending out every morning, the agenda for this, a link to be able to join. But we'll have a lot of stuff. So go ahead and sign up, and that way you'll know what's happening as we head into each show.
Yeah, there's free prizes. Dan's giving away a car to the 14th person who signs up.
And I also want to add, if you haven't, Rachael Bade put out her newsletter last night. It's excellent, great scoops. If you haven't go ahead and please sign up. There it is. Subscribe at RachelBade.com.
Subscribe, Rachael Bade. Don't forget the extra A.
Yeah, that's right. And then
the A stands for the additional content you get.
There you
Who
go.
do you have coming up tonight, Sean?
So I had this great conversation last week with Tim Parlatore, who is Navy JAG officer, close to Hegseth and the president. And obviously, with all of the stuff going on in Venezuela, a lot of talk on the Sunday show. We're going to bring back Tim, but he also represented one of the guards in the on the Jeffrey Epstein trial. So, he covers a lot on the civilian side of his law practice as well that we'll get into. So, we'll talk about this Supreme Court case. I think about whether or not it's going where we're going, where I think it's going, maybe even tariffs, but a lot to break down on the legal front with Tim tonight at 6.
And by the way, guys, Rachel's newsletter is free. I see people asking how much it is. It's a good price. Very good
well,
price.
you can also Venmo me if you just want to give money away.
We're taking your donation.
Just thank you guys all for joining. Again, I said this online on Friday. Keep your feedback coming. I know people send us direct messages, emails, what you would like to see, what you don't. We look at them all, and just appreciate your support and tuning in. And we'll see you tomorrow at 8:30. Enjoy your Monday, and let's see what the day brings.
Thank you, guys.